They were already dead. The crew, the flank, the command outpost they were supposed to protect. All gone, scattered like ash through the orbital rings of Silex Va. Captain Elia Renn stood alone on the bridge of the ASS Sable Edge, her fingertips still pressed to the comms panel that no longer returned a signal. No more orders. No backup. Just static and the silent hum of a dying ship. They told her to hold the sector at all costs. So now, she was the cost. Before we go further, subscribe to the channel if you're into stories where humanity doesn't bow down, where we fight, bleed, and win. This is one of those stories. You're not going to want to miss what comes next. Her right eye flickered, the retinal interface stuttering again. The damage was getting worse. Structural breach on Deck 2, oxygen leak on Deck 4, reactor heat climbing fast. Sable Edge wouldn't last long, but that wasn't the point anymore. The real objective was survival of data. The encrypted package in the AI core had to reach command. The problem was the Haline. They knew. Somehow. They anticipated every maneuver, predicted every evasion vector. It was as if they could see through human minds, read tactical decisions before they were made. Entire wings of ships lost to impossible counterattacks. Her fleet hadn't been outgunned. They'd been outthought. So she stopped thinking like a captain. Elia disengaged from the nav grid and began plotting routes with no pattern. Sharp shifts, non-optimal thrust angles, wasteful burns, irrational loops. Every instinct screamed against it, but that was the point. Her crew would have questioned it. She had no crew now. Sensors blinked red. 2 Haline interceptors on approach. Smooth black shapes, moving like mercury, folding space around them. She cut all thrust, let her ship drift. Not evasive, not defensive, just there. A floating vulnerable signature. The interceptors paused, orbit held, no weapons fire. Watching, waiting. They don't understand what I'm doing, she thought. Good. Somewhere deep inside Sable Edge, the AI package pulsed with compressed light, coordinates, schematics, a viral payload of false logic. It had to reach the fleet, somehow. Her hand hovered over the comm override. One last signal, one last try, and then the interceptors moved. They didn't fire. Not yet. The Haline vessels split, rotating in a mirrored arc like dancers tracing some alien choreography. Elia narrowed her eyes. They weren't hunting, they were analyzing, reacting to something they didn't quite understand. That was her advantage now, being broken. She pushed the nav relay again, this time selecting a gravitational slingshot that would loop her through the decaying debris of orbital ruins. Not a tactical path. Not survivable in any playbook. But that was the beauty. There was no playbook for madness. She dove. Sable Edge groaned as its weakened hull met the edge of a collapsing station ring. Shrapnel kissed the shields, what little remained of them. The inertial buffers failed for a split second, slamming her against the command rail. Blood smeared across her temple. She grinned through the pain. The interceptors hesitated. One blinked out, folded into hyperslip, likely running simulations. The other shadowed her through the wreckage. Good, she thought. Let them chase what they can't predict. Elia had always been known for strange tactics. She'd risen through the ranks not by rank-and-file brilliance, but by surviving missions no one else could. Her record was a list of near-suicidal maneuvers that somehow worked. The brass called her unstable. Command called her useful. Her crew had called her unlucky charm, but they followed her anyway. Now there was no one left to follow. She banked the Sable Edge into a radiation plume from a ruptured drive core, forcing manual shielding just long enough to pass through. The enemy didn't follow. Hesitation, analysis. That was the flaw. Haline thought in streams. Probability webs, logic matrices. Their brilliance was their blindness, because chaos wasn't in their code. Emotion wasn't in their calculus. Elia whispered to the silent ship, "Then I'll give you chaos." She rerouted auxiliary power to the transmission array, even as emergency systems screamed for life support. Her oxygen dropped to 64%. The comm hissed alive, barely. "Command," she said, voice tight, lungs already burning. Data core intact, attempting burst transmission. No guarantees. Static. Then a flicker. Her breath caught. "Copy, Sable. Repeat. Do you have hostile pursuit?" Elia glanced at the black void around her. The interceptor was still there, watching, waiting. "They're not following," she whispered. "They're studying me." Then the second one reappeared, closer, and they began to close. Elia didn't flinch. She leaned back in the half-collapsed command chair, blood still dripping past her jawline, oxygen dwindling. The two interceptors moved like predators, not yet sure what kind of prey they faced. Their formation was too perfect, engineered symmetry. No variation, no improvisation. That was their weakness. She triggered a full decoy burst. 6 phantom signals launched from the hull, each mimicking the Sable Edge's core signature. One flared, another blinked, a third tumbled in spin. The interceptors adjusted, tracking all at once. But they didn't fire. Still watching, calculating. She smiled. "You're afraid I might matter." The enemy didn't understand instinct, didn't know what it was to guess without data, didn't understand that survival was not always logical. The nav panel flickered, warp drive offline, sublight failing, shields at 12%. She had minutes, maybe. "Command," she rasped into the mic. "Final burst failed, jamming persists. Requesting protocol override, manual package deployment." No answer, not this time. Elia pushed up from the chair, unsteady. The corridor outside the bridge was scorched and half-collapsed. She stepped over charred wiring, passing the bodies of her former crew. There was no time to mourn. She descended to the AI core manually, Deck 5, Section C. The core chamber was lit in cold white pulses, the central node humming with compressed energy. She entered the override code, her biometrics confirmed. "Begin extraction," she whispered. The sphere detached, fist-sized, warm, alive with encoded pulses. It held the false logic payload. Not just coordinates, confusion. Inside it, a simulation loop designed to poison the Hellions' predictive engine with irrational human behavior. Patterns that made no sense to a mind that required symmetry. She clutched the sphere to her chest. Delivery must be physical. From outside, the ship trembled. They were close now. She could feel it in the hull. Elia made her way to the escape sled, a one-shot launch pod with barely enough thrust to reach open range. She jammed the core into the cradle, strapped in, hit the ignition. The sled exploded from the wreckage, streaking into void. The Sable Edge behind her erupted, reactor breach tearing it apart. The interceptors shifted course. Fast, too fast. They had decided. Elia turned her head slightly, whispering into the sled's short-range beacon. "You want the package? Come take it." And they did. The overload indicators screamed red across the console, blinking like a swarm of maddened insects. Conduits trembled under erratic pulse surges. The hull groaned. Not from damage, but from deliberate instability. Elia rerouted the maneuver core manually, feeding it asymmetric patterns, making the ship pulse like a dying star. No system could track what she was doing. That was the point. The Hellion were closing in, 3 vectors, perfect formation, mirror-synced like dancers in a vacuum. Their strategy was elegance distilled to violence. But Elia had discarded strategy. She'd become noise. She scrambled the tactical core, injecting it with conflicting instructions. Drift, fire, halt, rotate. Lights flickered. Gravity stuttered. Every calculation returned null. She layered false command packets onto emergency frequencies, embedded fabricated retreat coordinates into Mayday bursts, and flooded the network with her own biosignature, everywhere at once, like a ghost fractured across dimensions. The enemy faltered. Their formation twitched. One ship shifted, then another, uncertain, as if they were no longer sure what she was. She initiated burn across both lateral engines, then cut one mid-arc, sending the ship into a jagged spiral. Debris from earlier collisions peeled away in the wake, spinning like shrapnel through vacuum. She opened every remaining data relay, injected corrupted telemetry streams, interlaced with fragments of poetry, mathematical errors, nursery rhymes. The core screamed. The temperature warnings meant nothing now. Then, just for a breath, communication pierced the void. A single narrowband spike punched through the interference. She seized it. Coordinates, compressed, encrypted, launched. The data packet tore free from the chaos like a flare into storm clouds. As the hull cracked around her and the lights dimmed, Elia felt it. They were blind now. The Hellion couldn't see her, couldn't read her, couldn't predict what had no pattern. She'd stopped being a soldier. She'd become something else entirely, something they had no word for. The silence after the blast was absolute. No signal, no trace, just static curling across deep space monitors where Elia Renn's signature had once lived. Her ship, a blur of fire, decoys, false trails, was gone, vaporized somewhere beyond the reach of certainty. But the packet had landed. At Fleet Command, the transmission unraveled across secure lines. unfolding its compressed payload like a final breath. Coordinates, trajectories. A mapping of the Halian tactical lattice, threaded with something else. Something not sent, but encoded. Entropy, embedded into the logic matrix. Within hours, their predictive grid began to shatter. Enemy ships misaligned, formations twisted into collisions. Attacks launched seconds too early, too late, too wrong. Their command net flickered, collapsed, rebooted, then fractured again. It spread like a virus, but not through hardware, through reasoning, through intent. For the first time in the war, the Halion were reacting. Not dictating, not leading. They were guessing, and losing. The human fleet advanced through gaps that shouldn't exist, seized footholds never offered. Analysts tried to quantify it. They couldn't. Nothing about the enemy's breakdown was material. It was conceptual. Strategic cause and effect had unraveled. In the debriefing room, the Admiral tapped a single file on the table. It bore Elia Renn's name. Inside, not just service records, but neurological overlays, experimental logs. She hadn't volunteered. She'd been chosen, years ago. Conditioned to defy sequence, trained in asymmetry, her thoughts carried chaos like a rhythm, controlled but contagious. She'd been the weapon all along, a living disruption field, a walking anomaly, sent not to survive but to infect. They hadn't told her. She hadn't needed to know. Mission complete. Pattern broken. And somewhere far beyond the front, in the silent dark where no sensors reached, a system drifted into collapse, still chasing the ghost of a woman who never made the same decision twice.